In this video, we're going to be looking at rounding numbers to the nearest 10, 100, 1000, and so on. You've probably come across rounding loads of times, but you might not have thought about it. For example, imagine somebody wins a jackpot on a lottery, and they win a total of £7,203,495 and 21 pence. If someone asked them how much they won, they probably wouldn't go around telling everyone the exact figure, £7,203,495 and 21 pence. They would probably just say, oh, I won 7 million. Or they might say, I won 7.2 million pounds. The point I'm trying to make is that often we don't care exactly what a particular number is. We just want to know roughly how big that number is, whether it's how much somebody won on the lottery or the population of a country, for example. In 2019, it said that the population of the UK was 67 million people. Does that mean there were exactly 67 million people? Probably not. This is a rounded figure. What that means is that the true figure isn't exactly 67 million necessarily, but we're saying it's 67 million because that's close enough. And it's an easy figure to work with. Let's get into the examples. In the first question, we need to round 82 to the nearest 10. Now, to round a number to the nearest 10, what we want to do is find the number that's in the 10 times table that's closest to 82. And we can do that by thinking about the number in the 10 times table that's just below and just above 82. And that is 80 and 90. So if I consider those on a number line and then think about what's halfway between those, because that's going to help me decide which is closer. Well, halfway between 80 and 90 is 85. Now, where is 82 going to be on this number line? Well, it's between 80 and 85, so it's somewhere around here. And we can see that because 82 is on the left of 85, it is closer to 80 than 90. I'm just going to highlight the 80 because that's the number in the 10 times table that is closest to 82. And that means 82 rounded to the nearest 10 is simply 80. Let's have a look at question B. This time we want to round 98 to the nearest 10. Now again, rounding to the nearest 10 means looking for the number in the 10 times table that's closest to 98. So the number in the 10 times table that's just below 98 is 90, and the number that's just above 98 in the 10 times table is 100. So I can mark these on a number line as follows. Exactly halfway between those is 95. And 98 is clearly above 95, so it's somewhere around here. And we can see that that is closer to 100. So 98 rounded to the nearest 10 is 100. That's the number in the 10 times table that is closest to 98. Pause the video and have a go at part C for yourself. Here's what you should have found. The number in the 10 times table that is just below 168 is 160. And the number that's next in the 10 times table is 170. And we can see that 168 is in between these. And the question is, which one is it closest to? Well, exactly halfway between is 165, and 168 is going to be greater than 165, so it's somewhere around here. And we can see that that is closer to 170 than 160. So the number in the 10 times table that's closest to 168 is 170. Before we move on to D, I just want to ask a quick extra question. What if I want to round 165 to the nearest 10. Let's show that on a diagram. So we're not dealing with 168 this time. We're looking at 165, which we've already marked on. That's exactly halfway between 160 and 170. Now, it's equally close to 160 and 170. So it doesn't really make sense to say which one of these is it closer to. But mathematicians have decided that whenever that happens, what we do is we round it up to the larger option. So we would say 165 rounds to 170 to the nearest 10. Just to recap, if the number that you want to round is exactly halfway between, what you do is you round it up to the higher one. Okay, let's move on to question D. This time I want to round 528 to the nearest 100. That means I'm looking for the number in the 100 times table that's closest to 528. So the number in the 500 times table, that's just below 528, is 500. And the next number along in the 100 times table is 600. And we can see that 550 is the number that's exactly halfway between those. Now, where is 528 on this number line? Well, it's in between 500 and 550. It is somewhere around here, and that means it is closer to 500 than 600. So 500 is the closest number in the 100 times table to 528. So 528 rounds to 500. Pause the video and have a go at question E for yourself. Here's what you should have found. You should have spotted that 979 is between 900 and 1000, and halfway between those is 950, and 979 is in between 950 and 1000. So that means it's closer to 1000 than to 900. So we're going to round 979 to 1000 to the nearest 100. Before we look at the next questions, let's just notice when you're rounding to the nearest 10, your answer must be something in the 10 times table. 80, 100, 170, they're all in the 10 times table. If you're rounding to the nearest 100, your answer must be in the 100 times table. This here is in the 100 times table. It's 5 times 100. 1000 is also in the 100 times table. It's 10 times 100. So keep that in mind when we look at the next questions. For example, take a look at questions H, I, and J. In these cases, we're rounding to the nearest 1000. Now that means the answer must be something in the 1000 times table, like 1000, 2000, 3000, 4000, and so on. It could be 17,000, it could be 18,000, it could be 19,000. Basically, if you're rounding to the nearest 1000, your answer must be in the 1000 times table. Pause the video and have a go at all of these questions. Here's what you should have found. 423 rounds to 400 to the nearest 100. It's in between 400 and 500, and you can see that it's closer to 400 because it's less than 450, which is halfway between them. Now, 27, that's an interesting one when we're rounding it to the nearest 100. Think about the number in the 100 times table that's just below 27. Well, 0 times 100 is 0, and the next number along is 100. So remember, your 100 times table goes up in steps of 100, which means what comes before 100 is 0. So here's our number line. What's exactly halfway between these? Well, that's 50. And that's going to help us decide which is closer to 27. 27 is in here, and you can see that the one that's closest to 27 is 0. It's not 100. So 27 is going to round to 0 when rounded to the nearest 100. Let's move on to H. We've got 4021, and we're rounding this to the nearest 1000. That means our number line is going to be between 4000 and 5000. Those are the numbers in the 1000 times table that are closest to 4021. But which of these is the actual closest? Well, let's think about what's halfway between them. That would be 4500. Now, 4021 is actually very close to 4000. It's over here. It's definitely less than 4500. So, which is closer out of 4000 and 5000 to our original number? Well, that's 4000. So 4021 to the nearest 1000 is just 4000. Moving on to I, we have 8500. And again, we're trying to round to the nearest 1000, which means we're looking at 8000 and 9000 on our number line. And exactly halfway between those is 8500. But that's the very number we're interested in. What does that round to the nearest 1000? Well, it's actually equally close to 8000 and 9000. It's exactly 500 away in both directions. But remember, we said a few minutes ago, when that happens, mathematicians have agreed that we say it rounds to the one that's above. So we round it up. And that means in this case, we say 8500 rounds to 9000. Finally, let's have a look at 17,741. Well, the two numbers that we're interested in our number line are 17,000 and 18,000. Those are in the 1000 times table. That's just 17 lots of 1000 and 18 lots of 1000. And 17,741 is definitely in between these. But where exactly is it? Well, let's think about our halfway point first of all. Halfway between that and that is 17,500. Now, 17,741, well, 700 is greater than 500, so 17,741 is somewhere in here. And we can see that is clearly closer to 18,000 than it is to 17,000. So, to the nearest 1,000, we get 17,741 rounding to 18,000.